Queen Victoria, born Alexandrina Victoria on May 24, 1819, at Kensington Palace in London, entered the world with little expectation of one day becoming the monarch who would define an era. She was the only child of Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, the fourth son of King George III, and Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld. Her father died suddenly when she was less than a year old, and she was raised in a protective and highly controlled environment known as the Kensington system, a strict set of rules enforced by her mother and Sir John Conroy, a domineering advisor who sought to control both mother and daughter. Isolated from other children and kept in a near-constant state of surveillance, young Victoria became self-reliant, strong-willed, and acutely aware of her role in the royal succession. She was educated privately, receiving instruction in languages, history, geography, and moral philosophy, and from an early age showed intelligence, curiosity, and an unusually strong sense of personal dignity. Her upbringing was lonely but formative, instilling in her a deep sense of duty and resilience. When her uncle, King William IV, died without an heir in 1837, Victoria, at just 18 years old, ascended the British throne. Her youth and inexperience caused concern among some politicians, but her first act of independence, refusing to allow her mother to attend her first meeting with the Privy Council, immediately signaled a new monarch with a mind and authority of her own. She was crowned in a grand ceremony in 1838, and the early years of her reign saw her grow in both confidence and political acumen. One of the most transformative events of her life came in 1840 when she married her first cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Though initially arranged for dynastic reasons, their marriage blossomed into a deeply affectionate partnership built on mutual respect and shared ideals. Albert became not just her consort but her closest confidant and advisor. He helped shape her views on governance, morality, and national progress. Together, they championed science, education, the arts, and industrial development. Their union produced 9 children, who would eventually marry into royal families across Europe, earning Victoria the nickname Grandmother of Europe. Albert's influence was everywhere, from his role in organizing the Great Exhibition of 1851, which celebrated Britain's industrial and imperial might, to his advocacy for reform and modernization. Victoria relied heavily on him, and his sudden death in 1861 from typhoid fever devastated her. Overwhelmed with grief, she withdrew from public life, entered a prolonged period of mourning, and wore black for the rest of her life. Her absence from public appearances created a political vacuum and sparked criticism, with some calling for the monarchy's relevance to be re-evaluated. Yet even in her seclusion, Victoria remained engaged in state matters, corresponding with ministers and asserting her views, often with stubborn conviction. Her long reign coincided with a time of unprecedented change in Britain and the world. The Victorian era was marked by industrialization, urbanization, the expansion of the British Empire, and advances in science and technology. Britain became the world's foremost global power, and Queen Victoria, though constitutionally limited in her direct influence, became the living symbol of a vast and multicultural empire. In 1876, in recognition of Britain's dominance in South Asia, Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli bestowed upon her the title Empress of India, a gesture that pleased her greatly and reinforced her image as the matriarch of an empire on which the sun never set. Though she had no direct authority over policy, Victoria had a significant personal impact on politics. She worked closely with prime ministers throughout her reign, 10 in total, developing a particularly fond relationship with Disraeli, whose charm and support for empire endeared him to her. In contrast, her relationship with William Gladstone was often strained due to ideological differences and his formal demeanor. She wielded her influence through personal correspondence and private counsel, shaping events behind the scenes. As a monarch, she was deeply conservative, upholding Christian morality, family values, and the institution of monarchy itself. Yet she reigned during a period that saw growing demands for democratic reform, the expansion of suffrage, the improvement of labor conditions, and the slow but steady advance of women's rights. Victoria adapted to change, if reluctantly, and by the late 19th century, her popularity had recovered. She gradually returned to public life, especially during her jubilees, which became grand national celebrations. Her Golden Jubilee in 1887 marked 50 years on the throne and was celebrated across the British Empire with parades, services, and tributes, reinforcing her role as a unifying figure. A decade later, her Diamond Jubilee in 1897 was a monumental affair, attended by dignitaries from around the world and watched by millions of subjects who viewed her not just as a sovereign but as an institution. Her image had become synonymous with continuity, stability, and moral respectability, even as the world around her transformed rapidly. The twilight of her reign saw her become a beloved grandmotherly figure who had outlived most of her contemporaries, including many of her own children. The last years of her life were marked by declining health and the sorrow of personal losses, including the deaths of close family members. Nevertheless, she continued to carry out her royal duties with remarkable devotion, attending to state papers and hosting foreign dignitaries until the very end. On January 22, 1901, Queen Victoria died at Osborne House on the Isle of Wight at the age of 81, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Her passing marked the end of the Victorian era and the close of a remarkable chapter in British history. She had reigned for 63 years and 216 days, the longest reign of any British monarch of the time, and oversaw the transformation of Britain from a regional power to a global empire, from agrarian society to industrial superpower. She left behind a legacy of constitutional monarchy that continues to shape the British political system, and her name endures in the countless places, institutions, and cultural references associated with the era. Queen Victoria's life was one of extraordinary responsibility, resilience, and adaptation, and her reign remains a defining period that shaped the modern world.